What happens when prejudice blinds us to wisdom standing right before our eyes? Today's story reveals how quick judgments based on appearance can cause us to miss life-changing opportunities. If you ever wonder how different your life might be if you look past the surface of those around you, this narrative will make you reconsider how you interact with everyone you meet. The morning sun struggled to penetrate the dense fog hanging over the financial district as Marcus Reynolds strode purposefully toward the gleaming glass tower that housed Kingston and Associates. At 32, Marcus projected the image of success in his tailored charcoal suit and Italian leather shoes that cost more than some people's monthly rent. Yet beneath this carefully constructed facade of confidence lurked a desperate man drowning in debt. His career hanging by a thread after a series of risky investments had backfired. Today was his final chance, a meeting with potential investors who might salvage his failing portfolio and professional reputation. His polished appearance concealed the fact that he had maxed out his last credit card to maintain the illusion of prosperity. Spare some change? The raspy voice came from a hunched figure seated on a milk crate near the entrance to Financial District Plaza. Marcus barely glanced at the elderly man in the worn, faded coat. The old man's weather hands extended a small paper cup containing a few scattered coins. What caught Marcus's attention, however, was the oddly pristine leather-bound notebook resting on the man's lap, incongruent with his otherwise disheveled appearance. "Nothing today," Marcus muttered, accelerating his pace. "Sometimes the most valuable currency isn't in your wallet," the old man called after him, his voice carrying surprising strength. "It's in how you treat people." Something in the man's tone made Marcus pause. He turned back, irritation flashing across his face. "Look, I've got my own problems right now. I don't need a lecture from someone who," he gestured dismissively at the man's appearance, "clearly doesn't know the first thing about success." The old man's eyes crinkled with quiet amusement. "And what does success look like to you, young man?" "Not ending up on the street begging for quarters, for starters," Marcus snapped, immediately regretting his harshness but too proud to apologize. Instead of taking offense, the man smiled gently. "Interesting. I once thought success was measured by the balance in my bank account, too. Made my first $1 million by 25, had hundreds of employees by 30. But do you know what I discovered?" Marcus checked his watch impatiently. "I'm sure you're about to tell me something about how money doesn't buy happiness." "No," the old man replied, opening his leather notebook. "I'm going to tell you that your meeting with Kingston and Associates today is going to fail." Marcus froze. "How did you know about my meeting?" "The same way I know that your pitch focuses on short-term gains while ignoring sustainable growth. The same way I know you've been falsifying some of your returns to attract investors. The same way I know that underneath that expensive suit, you're terrified." The color drained from Marcus's face. "Who are you?" "Just an old man with time to observe the world," he replied, scribbling something in his notebook. "But if you'd care to sit for 5 minutes, I might have some advice worth more than the change you won't spare." Every instinct told Marcus to walk away, to dismiss this encounter as the ramblings of a deranged, homeless person. Yet something in the old man's eyes, a clarity and intelligence that seemed to see right through him, made him hesitate. "I'm already late," Marcus said, but his feet remained rooted to the sidewalk. "No, you're right on time," the old man replied, patting the empty space beside him on the concrete planter. "Your meeting isn't for another 40 minutes. You plan to arrive early to review your notes in the lobby, hope and project confidence." Marcus reluctantly sat down, maintaining distance between himself and the weathered stranger. "Fine. 5 minutes." The old man nodded. "Your approach to today's presentation is fundamentally flawed. You're trying to dazzle them with complex projections and ambitious returns because you're desperate. Desperation has a scent, and investors can smell it from miles away. And I suppose you're an expert on investment strategies?" Marcus couldn't keep the sarcasm from his voice. "I founded Kingston and Associates in 1987, the man said simply. Marcus laughed. "Right, and I'm Warren Buffett." The old man continued as if Marcus hadn't spoken. "The problem with your investment strategy is that it prioritizes extracting value rather than creating it. You're so focused on making money that you've forgotten the fundamental purpose of investment, to build something meaningful." Despite his skepticism, Marcus found himself listening intently. The man spoke with conviction and used terminology that suggested genuine familiarity with the financial world. Your portfolio focuses too heavily on speculative tech stocks and over-leveraged real estate ventures. The man continued. What you need is to diversify into stable community infrastructure projects. Lower returns initially, but sustainable growth that builds genuine value. Those kinds of investments take years to mature, Marcus objected. My clients want results now. And that short-term thinking is exactly what's brought you to the brink of professional ruin, the old man countered. Do you want to chase quick profits until there's nothing left to chase? Or do you want to build something that lasts? For the first time in months, Marcus felt something shift inside him. A realization that he had indeed been caught in a destructive cycle of increasingly desperate gambles. Who are you, really? Marcus asked, his voice quieter now. The old man smiled enigmatically. Someone who learned the hard way that the measure of a person isn't in what they accumulate, but in what they contribute. Someone who had everything the world considers valuable, yet found himself profoundly empty. He tore a page from his notebook and handed it to Marcus. Here's what you should present today. A complete restructuring of your approach, focusing on ethical investments with community impact. It won't make anyone rich overnight, but it will create sustainable wealth while actually improving lives. Marcus stared at the page, covered in neat handwriting detailing a comprehensive investment strategy with specific companies, percentages, and projections. The level of detail was astounding. Why would you help me? Marcus asked, genuinely confused. I was rude to you. Because 40 years ago I was you, the old man replied, gathering his few belongings. And someone showed me kindness when I least deserved it, but most needed it. Sometimes the universe gives us second chances through unexpected messengers. As Marcus studied the investment strategy, recognition dawned slowly. The approach outlined was remarkably similar to the founding philosophy of Kingston and Associates, before the company had shifted toward more aggressive investment models under new leadership. When he looked up again, the old man was already walking away, his gait surprisingly steady. Wait! Marcus called after him. I don't even know your name. The old man turned back slightly. Names aren't important. What matters is whether you'll use what you've been given. Marcus stood there, clutching the notebook page, facing a choice that would determine far more than just the outcome of today's meeting. Marcus stood frozen at the entrance to Kingston and Associates, the page from the old man's notebook clutched in his trembling hand. The gleaming lobby with its marble floors and soaring ceilings suddenly felt like foreign territory. He had rehearsed his original presentation dozens of times, but now he contemplated discarding months of work based on advice from a stranger on the street. Mr. Reynolds? The receptionist's voice pulled him from his thoughts. They're ready for you in the Fairmont conference room. As Marcus rode the elevator to the 38th floor, he studied the handwritten notes once more. The strategy was elegant in its simplicity, yet profound in its vision. Investments in affordable housing developments that included community spaces and job training facilities. Sustainable energy projects for underserved neighborhoods. Microloans for small businesses owned by people from marginalized communities. Each proposal demonstrated deep understanding of market forces, while maintaining unwavering commitment to social impact. The conference room door loomed before him. Marcus took a deep breath, tucked the notes into his breast pocket, and entered to face the panel of 5 stern-faced executives seated around the polished mahogany table. Mr. Reynolds, we reviewed your previous submissions, began Victoria Kingston, the sharp-eyed CEO whose reputation for ruthlessness was legendary in financial circles. I'll be blunt. We have serious concerns about your approach. Marcus felt sweat beading at his temples. In this moment, he made his choice. Ms. Kingston, I'd like to present an alternative strategy today, he said, his voice steadier than he expected. One that I believe better reflects the foundational values of your institution. Surprise flickered across Victoria's face as Marcus distributed printed copies of his standard presentation. Then, instead of walking them through it as planned, he began speaking from his heart, incorporating the insights from the old man's notes. The financial sector has become increasingly disconnected from the communities we serve. Marcus began. We chase quarterly returns at the expense of sustainable growth. We extract value rather than create it. Today, I'm proposing something different. For the next 40 minutes, Marcus outlined a vision of ethical investment that prioritized community development alongside reasonable returns. He spoke with conviction he hadn't felt in years, describing how infrastructure projects in underserved areas could generate stable returns while addressing social inequities. The future of investment isn't in exploiting market inefficiencies, he concluded. It's in recognizing the untapped potential in communities that traditional finance has overlooked. By investing in people's dignity and potential, we create sustainable value that benefits everyone. When he finished, silence hung heavy in the room. Victoria Kingston studied him with unreadable eyes. "That," she finally said, "was not what I expected from you today, Mr. Reynolds." Marcus braced himself for rejection. It was significantly better. A thin smile crossed her face. "Reminds me of the company's original mission statement, before my father stepped down as CEO." "Your father?" Marcus asked, confusion evident in his voice. "Edward Kingston," she replied. "The founder." He had similar ideas about ethical investment and community impact. Unfortunately, the board thought his approach too conservative after the 2008 financial crisis, and he was eventually pushed into early retirement. "We've been more aggressive since then." Marcus felt a strange prickling sensation at the back of his neck. "I'm not familiar with your father. What happened to him after retirement?" Victoria shrugged. "He became disillusioned with the financial world. Gave away most of his fortune to various causes. Last I heard, he was living very simply somewhere in the city. We don't speak much these days. Philosophical differences about the purpose of wealth." The meeting concluded with tentative approval from Marcus to develop his proposals further. As he left the building, his mind raced with the impossible connection forming in his thoughts. Could the old man really be Edward Kingston, the billionaire founder who had disappeared from public life years ago? The afternoon sun had burned away the morning fog as Marcus retraced his steps to where he had met the old man. The milk crate remained, but its occupant was gone. Marcus searched the surrounding blocks, peering into coffee shops and scanning park benches, but found no sign of the mysterious stranger. Finally, exhausted and confused, Marcus settled on a bench in a small plaza. He pulled out the handwritten notes again, studying the elegant penmanship. At the bottom of the page, previously unnoticed, was a small notation. "Porter Street Community Center, 6 p.m., if you want to learn more." The address led Marcus to a modest brick building in a neighborhood he rarely visited, an area once considered the industrial heart of the city, now struggling through uneven gentrification. Inside the community center, a diverse group of about 30 people gathered in a circle of folding chairs. Some wore business attire, while others dressed in worn but clean casual clothes. The atmosphere hummed with engaged conversation. And there, in ordinary clothes but unmistakable now that Marcus was looking properly, sat the old man from that morning, leading the discussion with quiet authority. Marcus slipped into an empty chair at the back of the room, listening as community members discussed local business development initiatives, affordable housing proposals, and educational programs. The old man, Edward Kingston, if Marcus's suspicion was correct, facilitated with remarkable skill, drawing out quieter participants and gently redirecting those who dominated the conversation. "The purpose of wealth is to serve human dignity," the old man was saying. "Financial systems exist to support communities, not extract from them. When we forget this, we create prosperity for the few at the expense of the many." For 2 hours, Marcus observed as people from all walks of life collaborated on practical solutions to community challenges. No one treated the old man with special deference. He was clearly respected, but as a valued community member rather than a former billionaire. As the meeting concluded, people broke into smaller groups, continuing discussions or making plans for implementation. The old man noticed Marcus and approached with a warm smile. "You came," he said simply, "and from what I gather, you chose to present something different today." "How did you know I would?" Marcus asked. "I didn't, but I hoped you might recognize truth when you heard it, regardless of its source." The old man extended his hand. "Edward Kingston, though most people here just call me Ed." Marcus shook his hand, finding himself at a loss for words. Finally, he managed, Your daughter mentioned you'd given away your fortune, but she didn't say you were living simply? Edward chuckled. There's freedom in it. When you have nothing to prove and nothing to lose, you can focus on what truly matters. But why the act this morning? The cup for change, sitting on the street corner? Edward's expression grew thoughtful. It wasn't entirely an act. I do collect spare change for this community center's emergency assistance fund, and I find the perspective from that corner illuminating. You see people's true character and how they respond to those they believe have nothing to offer them. The words landed like a gentle rebuke, and Marcus felt heat rising to his face as he remembered his dismissive attitude that morning. I know what you're thinking, Edward continued, but don't be too hard on yourself. We're all works in progress. The question is whether we're progressing toward greater connection or deeper isolation. A young woman approached, asking Edward's advice about a grant proposal. He excused himself, but before leaving, he placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. Come back next week if you'd like. There's important work happening here, the kind that doesn't show up on quarterly reports but transforms lives nonetheless, sometimes including our own. Left alone, Marcus surveyed the room filled with people from backgrounds he rarely encountered in a professional bubble. Retail workers discussing credit union initiatives with retired teachers. Young tech professionals collaborating with longtime neighborhood residents on skill-sharing programs. Former inmates developing mentorship opportunities for at-risk youth. For the first time, Marcus saw the human reality behind the abstract numbers of his financial models. These weren't market segments or demographic categories. They were people with dreams, struggles, and untapped potential. And somehow, a billionaire who could have spent his retirement in luxurious isolation had found purpose among them, contributing not from his wealth but from his wisdom and presence. As Marcus left the community center that evening, the city looked different to him, not as a collection of investment opportunities or financial districts, but as an interconnected web of human lives. His encounter with Edward Kingston had cracked open a door to a different way of seeing success, value, and purpose. What would happen if he walked through that door? The question followed him home, challenging everything he had built his identity upon. The weeks following Marcus's encounter with Edward Kingston unfolded like chapters in a book he never expected to read. Each page revealed deeper truths about wealth, community, and purpose that challenged everything he had built his life around. Marcus found himself returning to the Porter Street Community Center every Thursday evening. Initially, he sat quietly at the back, absorbing the conversations around him. People from vastly different backgrounds shared their expertise freely. The retired teacher offering literacy programs, the formerly incarcerated contractor teaching building skills, the immigrant chef organizing cooking classes that doubled as cultural exchange. During his third visit, a young woman named Sophia approached him. Her eyes held a quiet determination that immediately commanded respect. "You've been watching for weeks," she said matter-of-factly. "Are you here to participate or just observe?" Her directness caught Marcus off guard. "I'm still trying to understand what happens here." Sophia's expression softened slightly. "What happens here is that people recognize each other's humanity and work together to address the challenges our community faces. No one's waiting for saviors or handouts. We're building our own solutions." "I work in finance," Marcus admitted hesitantly. "I'm not sure what I can contribute." "Financial literacy is one of our biggest needs," Sophia replied. "People here don't need charity. They need knowledge and access to tools that have been systematically kept from them." That conversation marked the beginning of Marcus's transformation. With Edward's quiet mentorship, he began offering weekly workshops on personal finance, demystifying the systems that have been designed to remain opaque to ordinary people. For the first time in his career, Marcus used his expertise not to extract value, but to empower others. "You're different," Edward remarked one evening as they walked together after a particularly energetic community meeting. The autumn air carried the scent of fallen leaves and new possibilities. 6 weeks ago, you couldn't even look these people in the eye. "I didn't see them before," Marcus admitted. "In my world, people were abstractions, market segments, investment opportunities, or obstacles. I never considered their full humanity." Edward nodded thoughtfully. "That's the most insidious aspect of wealth and privilege. the way it isolates us from genuine human connection. We surround ourselves with people who reinforce our worldview and avoid those who might challenge it. Is that why you gave everything away? Marcus asked a question that had been lingering since their first encounter. Edward's pace slowed as they approached a small neighborhood park. I didn't give it all away, he said with a slight smile. I redirected it. There's a substantial trust fund established to support community development initiatives. But yes, I chose to live simply because I discovered something important about myself. He gestured to a bench, and they sat together watching neighborhood children play on the modest playground equipment. I realized that my identity had become entirely wrapped up in what I possessed rather than who I was. Edward continued. My relationships were transactional. People sought my money or influence, not my humanity. When I removed the trappings of wealth, I discovered who truly valued me for myself. Like the people at the community center, Marcus observed. Exactly. Most of them don't know about my past. And it doesn't matter. What matters is what we're building together. Edward turned to face Marcus directly, which brings me to a proposal. Kingston and Associates has approved your community investment strategy, correct? Marcus nodded. Yes, though your daughter remained skeptical about the projected returns. Victoria lost sight of the company's original mission, Edward said without bitterness. But what if there was a way to demonstrate that ethical investment can generate meaningful returns while transforming communities? Over the next hour, Edward outlined a vision for a pilot program, a community-owned investment fund that would combine traditional financial expertise with grassroots knowledge of neighborhood needs. The initial capital would come from Edward's trust, but the governance would be shared among community members trained in financial stewardship. And you want me to lead this? Marcus asked, stunned by both the scope of the proposal and the trust it implied. Co-lead, Edward corrected, with Sophia. She has the community credibility and grassroots organizing experience. You have the financial expertise. Together, you represent the bridge we need to build. The proposal crystallized everything Marcus had been learning over the past weeks. It wasn't about charity or paternalistic giving. It was about redistributing not just resources but power, creating systems where communities could build their own solutions through equitable collaboration. 3 months later, the East Side Community Investment Cooperative launched with a modest ceremony at Porter Street Community Center. The room buzzed with energy as residents, business owners, and nonprofit leaders gathered to celebrate this new model of economic democracy. Marcus stood at the podium, surveying the diverse faces before him. He recognized many now, not just as workshop participants, but as neighbors, collaborators, and increasingly friends. 6 months ago, I believed success was measured by the balance of my investment portfolio. Marcus began. I chased wealth as a means of proving my worth, never questioning the systems that allowed some to accumulate while others struggled despite working just as hard. He gestured to Edward, who sat quietly in the back row. Then I met someone who showed me that true wealth isn't what we possess, but what we create together. Someone who had achieved everything our society defines as success, yet found greater fulfillment in community than in accumulation. Marcus introduced the innovative structure of the cooperative, how local residents would train alongside financial professionals, how investment decisions would prioritize community benefit alongside financial returns, how profits would be reinvested to address neighborhood needs identified by the people who live there. This isn't just about money, Marcus concluded. It's about recognizing that economic systems are human creations that should serve human flourishing. It's about building bridges between expertise and lived experience. It's about transforming not just communities, but the way we understand value itself. As the cooperative members signed the founding documents, Marcus found himself standing beside Edward. Did you plan this all along? Marcus asked quietly. That day on the street corner, was I just another project for you? Edward shook his head. I never plan outcomes, only possibilities. I simply create conditions where people might see beyond their assumptions. What you've done with that opportunity was entirely your choice. I judged you based on your appearance, Marcus acknowledged. I couldn't see past the surface. Most people can't, Edward replied. We're trained to value the packaging over the content, the position over the person. Breaking that habit requires practice. Across the room, Sophia was explaining the cooperative's structure to a group of elderly residents whose homes were at risk from rising property taxes. Her face shone with purpose as she outlined how the fund would acquire properties and establish permanently affordable housing with existing residents as partial owners. This model could transform how we think about community development. Marcus mused. If it works here, it could be replicated in neighborhoods across the country. That's always been the vision, Edward said, a hint of emotion in his voice. Not charity that creates dependency, but solidarity that builds power. Not extracting value, but creating it collectively. As the evening drew to a close, Marcus watched Edward slip away quietly. No grand farewell, no need for recognition. The elderly billionaire who had dressed as a beggar to test a young financier's character had planted seeds of transformation that were already bearing fruit. Marcus understood now that the most valuable investment wasn't in stocks or real estate, but in human potential and connection. The returns couldn't be measured in quarterly statements, but in strengthened communities, expanded opportunities, and restored dignity. 1 year later, the East Side Community Investment Cooperative had grown to include 3 neighboring communities. Its innovative model had caught the attention of municipal governments and foundation leaders across the country. Victoria Kingston herself had visited, initially skeptical but gradually impressed by the tangible results and sustainable returns. On the anniversary of their first meeting, Marcus returned to the street corner where he had encountered Edward. The milk crate was empty, but a small community garden now bloomed where there had been only concrete before, another of the cooperative's projects. Marcus sat on the edge of the planter, watching the diverse flow of humanity passing by. Some hurried past with the same tunnel vision he once had, focused on their destination rather than their journey. Others paused to appreciate the unexpected burst of color in the urban landscape. A young woman in a business suit rushed past, her expression tense with preoccupation. Then she stopped, turned back, and dropped a few coins into the donation box for the garden's maintenance. Marcus smiled, recognizing the small awakening that had changed his own life. The momentary choice to see beyond appearances and connect with something larger than oneself. Such moments of authentic human connection were the true currency of a life well lived. In that simple act of giving, Marcus witnessed the ripple effect of Edward's wisdom continuing to spread, one person at a time, one choice at a time, transforming not just individuals but the systems they inhabited. The retired billionaire's greatest legacy wasn't the wealth he had accumulated, but the vision of community wealth he had planted in others. As Marcus rose to leave, he noticed a small plaque recently installed beside the garden. Wealth is not what we possess, but what we create together. Below it, in smaller letters, in honor of Edward Kingston, who taught us to see the true value in every person. The transformation that had begun with a chance encounter between a desperate young financier and a wisdom-rich elder continued to unfold, not as a single dramatic event, but as countless small choices to prioritize connection over accumulation, collaboration over competition, and community well-being over individual gain. In the end, the most profound investment advice Edward Kingston ever shared wasn't about stocks or bonds or market timing. It was about recognizing that every human interaction offers a choice to extract value or create it, to dismiss or to engage, to judge based on appearance or to look deeper for the inherent dignity in every person. And that wisdom, freely given on a foggy morning by a billionaire dressed as a beggar, had proven more valuable than all the financial knowledge Marcus had accumulated in his years of formal education.